Do you know what? That was really, really good. That was it's like straight through. I don't think there was anything in there that I was kind of thinking, oh, we're going to have to edit that out, or no, that won't make sense. Or I think that was really interesting, and I think you've kind of come across in a way that's that is accessible and engaging. So yeah, good job. Hello and welcome to the engine room from Finally. I'm here with James Cash, the owner of Superfast IT. James, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. James, you might recognize from doing an industry insights article for the engine room. I think it was either last week or the week before. Now, James, I have to say in the article, one of the things that probably jumped out at me the most and was probably the most terrifying point was that 47% of manufacturing businesses were hit by a cyber attack over the past 12 months.
Yes, so I mean those can range from compromised passwords and email mailboxes right through to production being stopped due to ransomware attacks. But yeah, there's a whole range of those attacks, and yeah, very prevalent in today's times, unfortunately.
Yeah, especially with everything moving online, it seems more people, obviously manufacturing, maybe obviously production isn't happening necessarily from home, but with more office staff probably working from home more frequently. I'm sure some companies will be having a more flexible approach. Cybersecurity is something that's going to should be at least quite high on their priority list, right?
Yeah, definitely, especially now. I think at the start of lockdown, people were like panicking to get people working from home, and like cybersecurity took a backseat for a lot of businesses at that time. People working off the kids' laptops and things like that, and iPads and all sorts of stuff on their home networks, and companies scrambling to get people working. But now, that's got to change, and people need to circle back and look at the security side of things and make sure they're protected, because we're seeing like attacks all over the place now, and people, you'll read about them in the news. It's pretty commonplace.
And it's a compliance thing, right? I mean, there's that whole thing with, I know from a marketing perspective, GDPR and all that kind of thing, any sort of data breach is going to have massive repercussions for any company, right?
Yeah, obviously there's compliance in terms of data protection and risk of fines if you don't have appropriate cybersecurity controls in place, but also from your customers. A lot of manufacturers work in supply chains of bigger companies, and those companies will naturally enforce cybersecurity controls down through their supply chains to make sure that they're protected themselves and not exposed to a supply chain attack.
Right, absolutely, yeah. So obviously you've seen some of these company spotlights before, so the first part is that we're going to jump into your 30-second elevator pitch. Are you prepared?
Yeah, I'm ready. I am going to keep it short because I don't think anyone's ever listened to an elevator pitch for more than 10 seconds. So I'm going to try and go for a record time for you.
Okay. All right. I think our record, if I remember rightly, our record is around about 15 seconds. So you're going to have to, as long as it's not just one word, I think we're okay. But yeah, okay. Well, so your 30-second elevator pitch whenever you're ready.
Okay, so most small manufacturers don't have the time or the expertise to make the most of the technology that's available to them. So Superfast IT provides you with a complete team of IT specialists, so you can harness the full power of IT and make it a competitive advantage. And we're the IT support company that helps you win at business. How was that?
Or close. 17 seconds.
Yeah.
17 seconds. It was good. No, it was good. I mean, I can't be completely sure that 15 seconds is the record, but I mean that's got to be close.
I'm sure I could hone it, and
we'll bring you back for a second one just to see if you can do better. Yeah, no, I've got to be honest with you. Like the amount of people that get under 30 seconds, I could probably count on one hand if I'm being honest. But yeah, so I mean that's all interesting. So Next section, obviously, the big three. First question of the big three is, what is your favorite quote that you like to live by?
Okay, so my favorite quote, and it's one by Winston Churchill. It's if you're going through hell, keep going. And I think it's relevant to the pandemic, and encapsulates the British bulldog tenacity. And it's something I've shared with my team a lot. So whenever one of them comes complaining into my office about a personal problem, arm goes around, and I quite often trot that one out, and I use it myself as well.
That is a really good one. It has to be said. There's something to be said for just staying the course and keeping going, and especially sometimes it can be difficult, to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but you just got to keep going, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So question 2, what is your view, and this is probably quite related to your favorite quote, to be honest, but what is your view on the future of UK manufacturing?
Well, I think it's positive, and obviously technology is going to bring about a lot of changes. I used to work at Rover about 25 years ago when I first got started in IT, and I worked in the purchasing department within a small IT team in there, and there were 350 staff in a huge open plan office, and they only had 10 computers, all in a bank in the centre of the office, and they'd have to go and, if they wanted to send an email or raise a purchase order, they'd go and sit at one of these computers to do that. And obviously, like, things have come a long way since then. I was involved in putting a PC on every desk, and there's a lot of technology that's going to be around in the future, such as artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. But I think the thing that manufacturers need to focus on now from a technology point of view is definitely the cyber security aspect, because we see a lot of stories in the news and manufacturing companies and gas pipelines being shut down, and a lot of businesses and manufacturers think that they're too small to be targeted, that it won't happen to them. And obviously the big companies, that hits the news, but cyber criminals, they attack indiscriminately. They're trying doors and windows and looking for weaknesses, and when they find it, they will, they'll exploit it. And nation state countries will also they'll target smaller businesses, because they present an easy route into larger companies, and they can be used in supply chain attacks, such as prominent tier 1 defense contractors. We've seen stories in the news before of blueprints for Apache helicopters being stolen and things such as that.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, do you is that something you see a lot then? I mean, I suppose that it would be very easy, and I suppose it's probably a common misconception, as you say, for smaller companies to kind of think that who's going to attack us because we're a 2-person team, or a 5-person, 10-person, whatever team. No one's going to care about us. But I suppose that's the easiest access point, isn't it?
Yeah, well, a lot of those smaller businesses will have weaker security than a company that's got 10,000 people and multiple sites and an IT team, and they're going to probably have more rigorous controls in place than a lot of smaller organizations. Obviously, that's what we're trying to bring to our clients, is to bring them up to the same level of security as a larger company.
So I suppose it's one of those things that smaller companies need to start thinking like bigger companies in terms of how they secure their data, and if they are, especially if they are part of, as you say, that wider supply chain, that larger supply chain, it becomes more important.
And like these days, every company is a technology company, and every company depends on technology to run. And if you haven't got that reliable secure infrastructure in place, then you're going to run into problems.
Sure. Okay, so last question of the big three is, what is your biggest lesson that you've learned during your time around the manufacturing industry?
So like, probably the biggest lesson for me was seeing a small manufacturer brought to its knees through a ransomware attack. The IT company that they'd been using hadn't got sufficient controls in place. They were down for a couple of weeks. They lost a lot of data because their backups had been compromised, and it had a huge negative effect on their business. And that kind of brought it home to me that, you know, it's not just something that's in the news anymore. This is happening to businesses that are like a few miles away from us. You know, every company needs to sit up and take notice. And like, probably back then, when 5 years ago, when we came across that company, I was thinking, you know, well, we've never had a client hacked, and you know, it is something that you see on the news, but you know, or in the movies, but you know, this is happening on our doorstep now, and since then it's kind of, you know, escalated massively, and there's more stories in the news, and you know, more companies being hit.
Sure. And I suppose when it is those smaller companies, you know, it's almost as if the smaller companies need to be more aware of cybersecurity, because if they get hit, then their recovery, they don't have the sort of the backup that bigger companies might have. They don't have necessarily if it's a cash fine or whatever, or whatever it is, like something that it could wipe them out, right? If they had a breach, it could kind of destroy the company. Whereas a larger company might have, you know, loads of cash and revenue that they can go, okay, we'll take the hit, and it's absolutely fine.
Yeah, exactly. We were interviewing recently, and one of the guys that we were interviewing, the company he was working for, they'd been hit by a cyber attack. They were a firm of solicitors with about 50 staff, and they'd been wiped out for, you know, days, because they'd got 2 staff, and you know, for 2 staff to get around 50 machines and a bunch of servers, and you know, carry out the recovery, it's no mean feat.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, so next section is our question of the week. And this week, our question is, what are the top 3 quick wins for manufacturers when it comes to cybersecurity?
So my first tip is to get a competent authority to carry out a security audit and risk assessment. The first step in securing an organisation really is to understand what you need to protect and where you might be vulnerable. So don't just assume that because your IT company is doing some stuff and you've got an internal guy that you protected, because when we do these type of audits, we come across lots of companies that have insecure, outdated and vulnerable IT systems. My second tip is that if you've got blue chip customers, that you can expect that they're going to enforce security standards on you through your supply chain. And one of the starting points for them is often Cyber Essentials. So if you don't have the Cyber Essentials accreditation in place already, that's something that you should really look at, because when, say you work with BEA systems or another big, or you know, on a government contract, a lot of those are stipulating now as a basic level of compliance that you have the Cyber Essentials framework in place. My third tip is manufacturers having machinery with computers that are connected to it. So a lot of machinery these days has a computer that's involved in the control of that piece of equipment, and that piece of equipment might be expected to last for maybe 20 years, but that software, that computer is never updated, and you wouldn't normally keep a computer that long. So we have to take extra steps to protect these things by isolating them on the network. So we'd recommend that manufacturers, they have a segregation on the network, such as using something like VLANs or firewalls to protect that equipment from the main computer network, just to make sure that either those machines couldn't be damaged by an attack, or if they were compromised, that couldn't be used to access data on the corporate network. So those are my 3 quick wins: getting a security audit from a competent authority, getting the Cyber Essentials accreditation, and segregating your network for your industrial equipment.
Excellent. Well, they are brilliant tips, really actionable. I have to say that last one was one that kind of, about updating the software, something that you don't really think about, right? If you've got a computer and it's there, if attached to a machine or whatever, it's probably something that a lot of people don't think, well, that's going to be attached to my network, so it's an access point. If it's not being used for surfing the internet, for example, I suppose the misconception is, well, I'm not using it for that, so it can't be accessed, right?
Yeah, well, they might think that, but you could be another machine on your network is compromised, and then they, send. We've got clients that have big ovens that are controlled by, they're heating metal. That's controlled by computer equipment. Now, some of those are very old, and you wouldn't want that oven going into overdrive overnight because someone's decided to mess with the settings, or for that machine to be compromised because it's running Windows XP, for example.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that is probably going to come up, I imagine, as not an objection, but well, this will never happen to me kind of thing, or perhaps something you might see yourself. It's kind of that, why would someone do that? Why would someone want to, say, as you say, turn up an oven or whatever, or access a small company's network to change settings on something? What's the purpose? Is there a purpose?
Well, yeah. I mean, you've really got to look at who the threat actors are. Now, the big issue at the moment is cyber criminals, and this is like serious organised crime. It's not a kid in a bedroom that you might think of as a computer hacker. A lot of these cyber criminals, they're looking to impact your business by either through financial fraud, by compromising an email system or an accounting system, changing bank details, extracting money from your account or that of your customers or your suppliers, or they might be looking to encrypt your data to prevent you from having access to it, so that they can extract a ransom from you. But there's also nation state actors which might be just looking to compromise your systems to then gain access to one of your customers, or they might be looking to, they might want to turn up an oven just to cause, economic disruption to, a supply chain. North Korean hackers or Chinese, nation state sponsored attackers that would be looking to infiltrate companies in the UK so that they could potentially use those in stealing intellectual property, or just disrupting those businesses in the future, because if they can disrupt our economy, it gives them a political advantage.
Yeah, I suppose that's especially around manufacturing and with the steel industry and all that kind of thing, that's going to be quite a huge concern, I suppose. And although it's maybe not something people think about, it is something that goes on.
Yeah, and there's also there still are the traditional, hacking from a bedroom, or there's organisations that involve themselves in something called hacktivism. So they might be, targeting companies based on some kind of some sort of ideology, like animal rights. So if a company was involved in animal testing, then they might be targeted. Or even like we've had a client targeted because they're involved in dairy, and one of the farms that was involved in their supply chain had something to do with badger culling, and because they were in the supply chain, they were targeting all people in that supply chain. So there's various different things that motivate different people that can all lead to businesses suffering from cyber attacks.
I mean, it's kind of worrying.
Yeah.
I know it's not all doom and gloom as such, but it is kind of when you stop and think about how vulnerable everyone is really to come some kind of cyber attack. It does it makes you stop and think. We all think that we're safe because we're just one person, or we're just a small company or whatever. But when you are part of that bigger, as you say, bigger supply chain, when you're connected to other businesses, and if you are vulnerable, then it's something that you need to be thinking about.
Yeah, definitely. I think some comfort you can take from the fact that the majority of cyber attacks are mitigated by following good cyber hygiene, and if you keep your systems updated, use secure passwords, configure things in a secure way, use anti-malware software, don't let people have administrator rights, all the stuff that's included with Cyber Essentials, that can kind of prevent around 80% of cyber attacks. And then you need to look at things like backup and application whitelisting and all these other things that you can add on top of that. You can make your business pretty hard to attack, and that's what you want to do. You can use the analogy of like home security. If you've got an alarm and a German Shepherd and a high fence and a CCTV system and locks on your doors, the attackers are probably gonna move along to the next house, and there's a bit of an arms race from that respect, that you're gonna make your business a tough nut to crack. Then you might still get attacked, but you're reducing the likelihood, and also you're reducing the impact of that attack should you get one.
Well, this has been really eye-opening, really interesting chatting with you, James. James Cash, owner of Superfast IT, thank you so much for joining me in the engine room today. Have a good one.
Thank you, Matt.